Good morning. I landed in Germany on a very hot day in July of last year. I made my way from Frankfurt to a small city in southwestern part of the country called Reutlingen. And I had 3 suitcases and a dog. Along the way, I learned quite a few things. There is no such thing as air conditioning in most of this country. Nobody drinks tap water, and I still don't know why. There is no ice in drinks. Also, I don't know why. And if you want to go grocery shopping on Sunday, good luck. Everything is closed except parks and a few shops, and I think those are only open because the store owners forgot what day it was. I got good at watching, which is useful because people watching in Germany is a sport. I saw kids riding public transport to school and back, and small children walking an hour or two after it got dark alone. I saw people standing at the edge of a crosswalk with no cars around, waiting for permission from the electronic god of crosswalks to cross the street. 17-year-olds drinking beer, walking down the street, perfectly sober and fine. One day I saw an ambulance. Drove by while my neighbors and I were sitting at a cafe in downtown. And I remember saying, well, they're going to be paying that off for a long time. Kind of a knee-jerk reaction, one I think a lot of us think if we see something like that. They looked at me very puzzled and explained that there is no cost for using the ambulance and seemed to wonder why there ever would be. Of course, these sorts of experiences made me think we should do these things in America. We should copy this and paste that here. Everyone in America should do XYZ. But of course, that's not to be. But that was just the way I was. Typical liberal, just trying to copy and paste things into my country of origin that in many ways I'm kind of embarrassed of. But what I learned as I got to know more people and make friends, not an easy thing to do in Germany, was that while gun laws and things being closed on Sundays and 27 holidays a year and a legal requirement to give people 6 months notice before letting them go if they've been with a company at least 10 years, those things might be nice. They are the result of the culture that I am in, not the cause of the culture. So what leads to this? Why do I have to go without groceries on Sundays? Values. Before speaking to you today, I asked my German friends and some Indian colleagues from my MBA program if they had thoughts on America. What puzzled them? What didn't they understand? The first and most dominant response I got in asking people this question was guns. There's just not an understanding of how school shootings and just shootings in general could be so rampant, and yet nothing is ever done about it. Then there was a comment about what they saw as a double standard. How can a country with so many problems look down on other countries so much? How can they take so much pride in setting laws to regulate drinking and smoking with fines and age limits and place restrictions, but guns and gambling and pretty much every other aspect of American life goes unchecked, unregulated, and adrift? And when I look at the US, I wonder, where could we have gone wrong? And the land we occupy was not always quite this way. Before Europeans came, there seemed to be different sets of values scattered across this land. It was only when a group of people put independence as the primary foundation of society that things perhaps veered a little off course. Somehow, independence from aggressors and the desire for self-determination as a country bled into independence from each other and self-determination without regard to responsibilities to society or others in that society. The desire to have anything available all the time has created a society that requires minimum wage workers to work all hours of the night and all days of the week. The individual right to carry a concealed weapon overtakes the community's desire to have children live and go to school. The need to go anywhere at any time in a car means most public transportation systems in our country are used mostly only by those who cannot afford a car. And we've tried. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King once said, "It might be true the law cannot change the heart, but it can restrain the heartless." And over the years, we have tried so hard to use legislation, to some extent successfully, to address the symptoms of our lack of values as a country, while others have used legislation as a tool to rescind those changes. But nothing has yet changed that heart. And that's what it comes down to. Every society has a set of values on which it is founded. The country I live in redefined those values, both in language and structure of their government following the last World War. They even passed a law with an eternity clause, which I didn't know was a thing. But this eternity clause prevents future changes or edits to it. But this law states human dignity is inviolable. It's not too far from our belief in inherent worth and dignity. And I'm not saying that Germany is perfect. Anyone with a basic elementary knowledge of history understands the horrible tragedy of the millions of lives lost in the Holocaust and the world wars that killed many more. Germany has certainly struggled with its history. Yet each year, school children from across the country visit sites of former concentration camps to learn the impacts of a society that veered off course. Imagine if we took students from states in the South and took them to battlefields, and as opposed to reenacting them or talking about the battle itself, we talk about how society veered off course. In their reconstructed capital, the Germany equivalent of the Capitol building is built underground with a glass ceiling that citizens and tourists can walk on top of. Important symbolism, and an act that ensures legislators know who is above them. The United States has never really come to grips with its past, much less addressed its underlying failings. At each crossroads in history, we rehash old battle lines with those who benefit from systemic oppression, leveraging a broken democracy built on an electoral college system and a battle cry of independence against those seeking to bring values into a society that seems to value its lack of societal values. Now, we're even banning books in some states and changing how we teach this tainted history. The American core value of independence was a great sounding cry as we stood unified against British colonial control. Yet that independence was turned inwardly as a weapon against collaboration, interdependence, common good, and collective responsibility. A country on the brink of democratic meltdown can ill afford to continue down a path of self-indulgence and self-gratification. Now, even in my beloved new home, not all is well. There are fringes of right-wing extremists that are growing as a reaction to a slowing economy and the burden of a war in nearby Ukraine. While far from the majority, the signals are there and concern grows. And still, who would have thought 80 years ago that Germany would be a beacon of hope for refugees fleeing war, the financial underpinning of the European Union, and an exemplar of democratic values to the world? While introspection, time, and a lot of work have not changed its history, it has changed its present and future course. And as youth, we must continue to build communities of engagement, to create pockets where our values can be lived out, like MDUUC. We must strive to stay engaged even when we feel things are hopeless. In many ways, we struggle. But as a people of faith rooted in religious values that go back thousands of years, we've been here before. Our religious heritage is filled with those who stood up to persecution and lived lives in pursuit of a society that reflected our values. I hope we can continue to grow as a faith, as a community committed to shifting the future of our society as a whole, but also the communities and the neighborhoods and the social circles in which we exist. Every country struggles with its past, and we try to change things in the present and hope to impact the future. And together, we can do just that. May it be so.